As it was introduced, my name is Teresa. I'm the Director for Digital Exchange with the Government of Canada. So I'm responsible essentially for interoperability. We had a little bit of a rebrand. We used to be the Enterprise Interoperability team, and now we're the Digital Exchange. It seemed a little hipper. I think you need to sort of put digital in every title now. Although I'm not supposed to say the word hip. My 14-year-old says that's not cool. I'm also not allowed to dab in front of his friends. I've been told I'm not allowed to do that. So I'm going to be using the words interoperability and digital exchange interchangeably throughout my talk, so one means the other. So what's interoperability or digital exchange, and what does it have to do with standards? So we can spend the next 40 minutes talking a little bit about asynchronous messaging and MQTT protocols and RESTful APIs, but I think it would be a little bit more impactful to talk about the human aspect of interoperability. So this weekend, my neighborhood was struck by a Category F2 tornado. It was absolutely devastating. I live in an area that has a lot of old growth forest, and they actually built the houses in the 70s around the forest itself, around the trees. So you can imagine, some people would have 10 or even 20 trees, like these super tall pines, about 4 or 5 stories high on their property. And it was a key feature, and people in my neighborhood, they moved there specifically for the trees. So the largest devastation, of course, was the fact that all these trees, when the tornado came through, my husband actually watched it forming. It was kind of neat. Was the fact that these trees were falling on people's houses. And so that's a little bit of what it looked like. So on Friday, within minutes, our neighborhood was an absolute disaster zone. We had emergency responders, police, ambulance, fire trucks were on the scene almost immediately. They quickly assessed the damage and moved to action. The City of Ottawa came, Hydro Ottawa came. There was a gas leak, actually, I'm guessing as one of the roots pulled up, so we had to have that managed. Logging companies came in, arborists, they all descended on our tiny little community and quickly started working. We were all kept informed of the situation. Communications were excellent. People were coming by constantly to our house, checking in on us. Where are we? Little flags were going on our doors, and they were really quickly assessing and moving to action. Certain sections were evacuated. Watching your neighbors carrying their Louis Vuitton luggage over trees to evacuate an area is absolutely heartbreaking. But within minutes, there was an emergency response team in place to help all the people who were being displaced, right? To help them find a place because it was getting late, where they could spend the night. And of course, we had no power. Our power just came on yesterday, so at least I'm clean. You guys will be happy. I've had a shower. I have to admit, I was a little concerned. So no matter who you asked, everyone seemed to be on the same page. And, it was an absolute tragedy which struck, but it couldn't have been handled any better. So how does the reaction of an emergency responders unfold so gracefully and so elegantly? Part of it is years of training, hard work, dedication, drills. But every situation is different, and I'm guessing they likely hadn't, prepped for a situation where a heavily treed neighborhood would be hit by a tornado. That's where interoperability comes in. Right? It's the idea of sharing data in real time. So a friend of mine, Thomas from Public Safety, explained to me a little bit how this works. First, you have the local responders who come in, the police, the fire, the ambulance. And oftentimes with disasters like this, local municipalities are overwhelmed. So they work with the provinces, they work with the federal, and so there's a bit of a hierarchy. And they set up an emergency management office, which has somewhat of a coordinating function. It manages the deployment of troops and of people that need to, so that's why we had suddenly arborists and loggers, right, at our front door within half an hour of the disaster happening. But as you can imagine, if you're looking at even just strictly police, you have Ottawa Police, you have RCMP, you have OPP at the various levels. Each of them have multiple communications channels. Each of them have multiple systems which they have to manage, and that data needs to move across somehow. So the Canadian Public Safety has an interoperability group, which they're standing up, and they're really trying to move towards that unified model. It's interoperability in the GC today. So right now, we have some interoperability in the government. Mostly, it's all point-to-point connections with very little ability to scale and to reuse. So it's akin to me having conversations with Sean, with Thomas, with all these different people one-on-one, right? As opposed to having a network, right? But expectations and technology have evolved. Whether we're looking at sensor data from cars to determine potholes, we're actually doing a really cool pilot with GM and transport right now, or how artificial intelligence is leveraged to help better deliver services to citizens. Things are moving quickly, and we're no longer in a state where we can say, this is the future, because it's actually today. So the Government of Canada has also changed. We now have a digital agenda. We have Canada's first Minister of Digital Government. We have the Government of Canada Enterprise Architecture Review Board. I'm actually running over there right after this to present on digital standards. We have a digital policy that's going to be coming into play in the spring. We have an API-first approach for exposing services, and we have very strong digital governance. So becoming digital, what does it really mean? Over the past year, we've really started pushing the agenda towards a digital agenda. A key component of becoming truly digital is being able to connect your systems to allow for the sharing and the reuse of data. Applications will need to speak to each other, and not just within the federal government. We need to connect our applications across jurisdictions, with other governments, with non-governmental organizations, and internationally, with the private sector as well. And this has to be in real time. As we saw from our previous, disaster, minutes count, seconds count. We need to have this information as quickly as possible. We need to leverage industry-based open information standards to allow for that seamless integration. The Government of Canada will also need modern, secure, and scalable enterprise data exchange tools that departments can plug into. And of course, security and privacy will drive everything that we do. So our vision is really to get the right information to the right people at the right time. We saw this with our first responders being able to react quickly because they had the ability to share information quickly and securely with the people who needed it at the exact right time that they needed it. The goal of our little team is to enable the transition to government and to support a OneGC vision. So OneGC is sort of the idea of government as a platform that you can plug in, whether it's Alexa plugging in or citizens, businesses, devices, the whole world of IoT, being able to plug into one sort of larger ecosystem. So you're looking at government as a platform. And we want to make it easy for departments to share data with each other and with the outside world in a secure and modern way. So what are we doing, our little digital exchange team? So we have sort of three pillars that we focus on: leadership, standards, and building out an ecosystem. So I'll go into a little bit of detail on each one, and if you, we have a few minutes for questions afterwards if you guys have any. I'd be more than happy to answer. So providing leadership to government departments. So culture change is going to be absolutely by far our biggest challenge. We need to tackle that first. I always say, even though, my background's in technology, the technology is always the easy part, right? It's the culture change that's really going to be important. We're going to help our communities to think and work differently. We need our staff to embrace the idea of being part of a larger ecosystem, to collaborating, opening up services as APIs, shifting methodologies, and thinking about data in motion. We have data, which was actually the Monday of right after the tornado. We were supposed to have our community of practice, but it's been postponed by a few weeks. So we do have a digital exchange community of practice. Anyone's welcome. Right now we have over 300 people who are participating. It's a way for us to share information, share our stories on interoperability, what we're working on, and so departments can say, hey, I'm working on in this area over here, and someone can say, oh, that's kind of similar to what we're doing, and let's talk, right? So building that community and sharing those stories and sharing those ideas. The second piece we're looking at is setting standards for digital exchange. We really need to ensure that applications are speaking the same language, that they can actually be interoperable. Identifying common industry-based interoperability standards that we're going to need to adhere to, and really pushing open standards so that everyone can plug in. Really moving away from proprietary. We'll be releasing our API standards within the next month. I think November 1st was our deadline. I had a different deadline, but my management told me November 1st. So we're pushing that through, and that'll be coming out under the directive on the management of IT. So that's something that you can look out for. We'll have messaging standards which will follow. And building an ecosystem to make it easy for departments and agencies to leverage. That's the third pillar. And what we're really looking is providing departments with those building blocks to help them share information safely and securely. The centerpiece will be an API store, which we're in pre-alpha right now. I think alpha should be going out shortly. Departments can expose their APIs. They can be easily discoverable, easily consumable, and there'll be a whole life cycle management. And this will be mandated by Treasury Board Secretariat that departments, if you're building out APIs, you will need to have them at least cataloged within the API store. We have other components of what we're calling our Canadian Digital Exchange Platform, or CDXP. Again, it's a bit of a building block. It's a platform of interoperability tools. So we will have the API store as sort of the centerpiece. We also have an enterprise service bus, which is allows for more complex orchestration. So if you're doing an HR system and you're bringing someone in, all those pieces, that orchestration that needs to happen, they need to have a desk, they need to have a PRI, they need to have, security clearance, they need to have all these various different pieces. And that orchestration is what the service bus takes care of. And we're actually in the middle of doing an agile procurement for our messaging component. So messaging is more of an event broker where something happens, like there's a death, and the province sends that information out. And whoever subscribed to that, so IRCC, Veterans Affairs, whoever needs that information will subscribe. And so we're working through that right now and building out that ecosystem. So the other components of that ecosystem we'll be looking at next year. So bulk data transfer, that's the one thing that departments are always coming and asking. They have all these large data formats and, multimedia that they need to transfer. So we'll be looking at that next year, and we'll be looking at gateway. So those are our 5 components. So I spoke a little bit about the idea of government as a platform, or OneGC. The vision really aims to seamlessly integrate GC service offerings into Canadians' digital lives. To realize this goal, efforts are underway to explore the use of emerging technologies with industry leaders. So we're working with the Googles, we're working with the Amazons, we're working with Cisco and various other groups to really make that a reality. The Canadian Digital Exchange Platform is that foundational piece that's underpinning the OneGC and the government as a platform. And underpinning our Canadian Digital Exchange Platform are open standards. Common open standards like REST API will allow GC to seamlessly interface with Amazon's Alexa, back office systems like the e-procurement, and with provinces for birth-death notices. So that's our digital exchange platform. The printing press revolutionized communications, allowing one message to be written once and printed many times. We distributed to reach a wide geographical location and countless people. Digital exchange is the foundation upon which government as a platform rests. Providing secure data exchange ensures privacy of data. Allowing one message or to be quickly and automatically distributed is what's going to move us into the digital age. And leveraging common standards is going to be a keystone. So if we're looking at it from an analog perspective, if you're mailing a letter, you have your return address in the left-hand corner, your main address, your first name, last name, then your street, then your city, then your province, then your country, and then if you have some sort of a code, your stamp always goes on the right. This tells the post office where to send your letter in which country. Standards do this, right? This is standards. There's standardized way to send letters. So standards for data do the same thing. It's a common language that helps systems communicate with each other, and they can send information where it needs to go. So a little bit, the title of this one is Why Bother? So when we start looking at, why should we even engage with this? Like, it's easy for us to have those one-on-one conversations with people. Why should we blow everything up and start looking at things a little bit differently? Well, first of all, we start looking at, meeting citizens' expectations. We're in a point where people's expectations have far surpassed what we're delivering for the most part. They expect to have digital service delivery. They want to save time and provide convenience. The other key component on this is, which I haven't touched on yet, but is the whole idea of open government and open data and being able to reuse data and building trust with citizens. So I was very fortunate. I went to Estonia in March, and they were doing some amazing things as a digital government. And what was amazing, like the president, they have a card, they have an ID card. And that card gives them access to just about everything, right? So she was saying she signs cabinet documents with the card. She just, taps it or swipes it, and, cabinet documents are. But she also uses it to get on the bus, right? It's her bus pass. And everything in between. It helps her with the kids, getting them off and setting up any kind of medical or prescriptions. Everything's set up through this one digital. So it was quite an amazing experience how they've done it. The technology is a little bit dated behind the scenes, but that doesn't matter. Technology's, that's, again, like I said, that's the easy part. What's amazing, they use common open standards to interchange all of their data and exchange all of their data. And they are entirely digital. And I do have a little bit of time. I'll tell you a story. So we had a company from Estonia come and help us. They're actually coming next week to finalize some of the work that we were doing. And we always, as a government, we have net 30-day for payments. And they sent us they provided their service, and 30-day, day 31, I get a phone call or an email, actually a DM, saying, hey, just, where's my money? And I'm like, oh, we're the government. Like, don't worry, we're good for it. 6 weeks later, hey, sorry, where's my money? I'm like, oh, relax, you'll get it. 2 months later, where's my money? And I'm like, okay, this is, this is kind of weird. So I start looking into it. I get, talk to our accounts payable, and they come back and say, well, we've paid them. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm playing a little bit of the back and forth. They're saying, you haven't. We're saying, yes, you haven't. Until finally I get a screenshot from my accounts payable guy who's getting really annoyed with me by this point, saying, look, payment in full, done. So I went back to our Estonian friends. We were friends by then. They can drink, I gotta tell you. We were good friends. So I went back and I said, look, there seems to be some issue. Have you received anything at all from the government of Canada? And they're like, well, I have this letter. So he takes a photo of it. And I'm like, that's your check. And he's like, my what? I'm like, your check, that's your check. What do I do with it? I'm like, oh, just take it. I'm like, oh, seriously? Take it to the bank and they'll cash it for you. The next day he comes back. He's like, I've been to every bank in Estonia. They don't do that. Okay. So then I said, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. So I looked into it. We could actually transfer the money. That was no problem. But then I send him a form and I say, sorry, you're going to have to fill this out so that we can cancel the check and then transfer the money. So he, fills it out, and it's archaic. Even, myself trying to fill it out was ridiculous. So he fills it out and sends it to me with his digital ID, digital signature. And I kind of went, okay, can you please just print it, take a pen, sign it, scan it back in, and send it to me? And he's like, but okay. So he does that, and then he sends me his ID card, and he says, and I said, well, I don't need your ID card. And he said, but then how do you know it was me that signed it? Anyone could have taken a pen and signed it. This actually stamps it, right? And I realized the irony, and they're coming to help us become digital, and we're really proving to them that we are really not. Right. And so that whole idea of building trust and with their citizens is something that's very key for the Estonians. They have an incredible, system where if as a citizen, I can see and audit who has seen and looked at my government or my personal information. And one of the women we were talking to, she said, she doesn't check it all the time. Like, she's not paranoid, but she goes in every now and then. And she said, oh, the police looked me up. So she immediately launched an inquiry. Why are the police looking at me? Well, it happened that there was an accident on the street and her car had been parked on the side. So they pulled up her license plate. But she could get that information, right? Amazing. People get fired if you are looking, because they bake it into their legislation. If you are looking up someone's information and you're not allowed, bye-bye, you're gone, right? So they have this amazing trust that they've built. And so for us, I mean, that is a part of where we want to go. Maybe not in the exact same model, right? But that idea that citizens have a right to know who's looking at their information, why they're looking at their information. So building that trust. Further to that is sort of supporting economic growth, right? So if you're looking at open data and you're looking at making things reusable and people being able to pull that, it really spurs innovation. It builds new businesses that can be built around data reuse. It improves the interaction between government and businesses, reduces the friction. So imagine a business that has to submit, 3 different pieces of information to 3 different departments per employee, which is fine if you got 1 or 2. But what if you have hundreds and thousands, right? Imagine you can just do that with a click of a button, right? And not have to go into these different systems. And internationally, we really need to start keeping up with the rest of the world. We're part of the D7 now, which is really exciting. But we really need to push this. Plugging into an international ecosystem and becoming sort of a node as part of a larger network is really where we want to get. Whether it's food inspection, whether it's public safety, there's so many, or trade, there's so many opportunities for us on a larger scale. Sharing information with the global community opens up a lot of opportunities for us as well. And leveraging common open standards will enable interoperability with countless systems, making us more collaborative, more open, and more interconnected. But it all starts with the standards. They're at the heart of interoperability and at the heart of digital. So that's it, and we're going to leave a little bit of time for questions. But before we end, I do have a favor to ask of you. If any of you have friends, neighbors, family who are first responders, please thank them from the bottom of my heart. They have made this weekend a horrible tragedy such an easy thing to get through. So please thank them on my behalf and on behalf of my community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.